Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like or comment on my video and consider subscribing to my channel. So before we actually get into the gameplay within Beyond Light, let's have a quick recap on the story for Destiny. So predating the start of the game would be the battle between the Traveler, the big white ball, and the pyramid ships. So that is the first incident of combat that happens throughout the game. That is before we even exist within the cinematic universe. Now, it is very important because the moment this happens is the moment that we receive the ghosts. And that is part of your first cinematic. You get the story in it, and that's how the ghosts are born. And the ghost that resurrects us is from this incident. So once it had resurrected us, we get the power of light to fight, and then we move on towards trying to get ourselves into contact with the rest of the living civilization under the shade of the Traveler. So we move from the Cosmodrome in Russia to the tower, which is not the tower that you get in Destiny 2. It's another tower that was destroyed in the start of Destiny 2. So what happens from there is we actually progress on to try and find out what's going on with the enemies on Earth, and we end up awakening the hive on Earth, and we find out that the moon is someplace that we needed to go. And when we reach the moon, we find a ritual that was killing the Traveler. We stop it because the hive are an agent of the darkness. Then we move on to the next location, which is uh, Mars. Not Mars. We move from there to Venus, where we meet the Exo Stranger, and the Exo Stranger then tells us that we need to enter the Vex Black Garden, basically to destroy the threat that's hurting our travelers so that it can wake up again. And we end up going on a whole quest. We get a Gate Lord, we kill the Gate Lord, we take its eye, we gain access to the Black Garden, and in the Black Garden, we kill the heart of the Black Garden, resulting in us going into the story a little bit further to the point where we now actually have killed a part of the darkness and woken the Traveler again. Now we didn't wake the Traveler like we did in D2. We just made its power awaken a little bit. It wasn't being drained constantly. It wasn't in check. Now moving on from this point, we now start going on greater escapades. We fight the agents of the darkness again, and we end up killing the Prince of the Hive, Crota. Then from that day, it escalates on to one of the fallen houses. We fight one of their factions that splintered off. Now, the fallen are actually part of the travelers' previous civilizations, and that's why I don't really count them as an agent of darkness. So they end up being the next major enemy that we fight, and we fight one of the more dangerous houses, the House of Wolves, and we fight their Cal, and that's how we end up gaining a lot of friendship with the main character in the coming DLC, Varix. So that's the backstory on how we know Varix. We meet him through the Awoken, where we met Marasov, and she's the one who invited us to help with the problem they had when the wolves rebelled against her. Now, moving on from this incident comes the incident of Oryx. Oryx arrives in the system, and Marasov hatches a plan to steal his power for herself, having us kill him, and then she was going to steal the power. But she ended up failing, and she ends up retreating to her throne world in the Dreaming City. So that is what happens in the story at that point. So moving on from there, the next thing that happened was Siva. Now Siva is a piece of our Golden Age tech. It's a development tech that ended up going corrupt due to, how do I put it? Due to us interfering with it at the wrong time, and its security measure, Rasputin, determining that it was too much of a risk to let us get a hold of it, so he ended up attacking us. Now, from there, the next thing that happens is Destiny 2. So it starts off with an attack from the Cabal. The Cabal attack the Traveler to block off its light so the Guardians have no power. They block the light, they attempt to steal the light from the Traveler, harness it for their own power, make themselves the Chosen, and they end up failing in the end because we crash their plan, regaining our light in another way. and we end up killing Ghoul, who ends up becoming even more powerful before his death, waking the Traveler. The Traveler wakes up and it calls its old enemy in the process of waking up, who is the Darkness, who is the main enemy for this DLC. Moving on from there, we go on to the next set of incidents that happen in Destiny 2, which would be the Warmind. So, following this in the next section, the Cabal are on Mars and they're moving around, and Enna digging around for Rasputin. And when she ends up finding Rasputin, she finds out that Rasputin is buried with another enemy from the Hive. So we end up going there and we end up killing our first worm god, the Worm Zol. I'm not exactly sure. I think it is the worm god Zol. So we end up killing him, and that is where the Warmind goes. Then we end up going towards the Vex for the Infinite Forest, where we meet Osiris, who is one of the most legendary Vanguard from the past. And that's where we go into the forest, the Mercury expansion, and then that ends. Okay, now in between all of this, we end up doing a lot of things for the Emperor Callus, but he's not really a fatal point of the argument of what's going on. He's just basically like a side story to everything that's going on. I will speak about him when it comes to his big section. Okay, let me get this here back to the start. Okay, so we end up doing that, and then we come to the first major breakthrough, the Forsaken DLC. Now, during the Forsaken DLC, we end up finding out that Sov has gone crazy after his sister died in the attack against the Dreadnought, where she planned to steal the power from Oryx, and he was trying to resurrect her, but he was being corrupted by the Ahamkara, which is what we call wish dragons in Destiny, and it was actually controlling his mind and corrupting him, making him crazy, see things, forcing him to do things. He ended up corrupting the Fallen, making them a new race called the Scorn, and he keeps going forward and further with his agendas until the point where it comes uh, to him killing Cade 6. Then we get involved directly in the whole issue, and we end up killing the Scorn, and we end up killing, or Petra Venge ends up killing, uh, what's his name, Prince Aldrin. Then we continue on and we kill the Ahamkara. It grants a wish to Sevathun. Now, Sevathun is one of the worm supplicants, should I say that way there? And she's one of the three most biggest agents of the darkness that we're going to face off against from the Hive. Now, my breakdown of the story is just a very basic, quick run through. I don't intend to go beyond 10 minutes. That's going to be my basis for most of my videos. So, moving on past this, what happens was we end up going in, we end up defeating the Wish Dragon, and we end up going through what's called the Curse Cycles. We end up finding out that Sevathun is up to something. She's building a power through this Curse Cycle, and that's as far as we get with understanding what's going on. After that, let's see what happened after Forsaken. There was a few small DLCs, and then we were led to, let's see, we went back to Mercury. There was the Trials of Osiris, where we did the sundials, and we ended up resurrecting Saint 14. Then what else was there? No, this isn't what I wanted. I'm actually forgetting a lot of the other pieces of story that happened after Forsaken. Okay, then there was the whole Emperor Callus thing, where he was trying to make us one of his servants. I know there was that whole subsection. It's like a small little DLC that came out, and it progressed all the way up to the Season of Arrival, where we ended up not Season of Arrival, Shadowkeep, where the Hive actually arrive again on the moon, opening up a red keep, which is a link directly to the pyramid ships, which is where everything starts getting a bit dicey, We rush in, we try and help them, we try and help the Guardians on the Moon out. We defeat the Hive again, killing the remainder of Oryx's daughters, and we find out that Shiva, Ra, and Savathun are coming. We find out about the darkness approaching. Then we start investigating further into it. We end up upgrading Rasputin when the Cabal tried to do a last ditch effort to destroy Earth with the Almighty, one of their weapons that they were going to use to destroy the sun in their whole campaign. From there, it leads on to this point where we are right now. We're not yet at the war with the darkness. We're actually now exploring darkness powers, and the war is coming later in what is going to be called Lightfall. Or is that the code name for the DLC? I'm not exactly sure. But that is coming in a few months. Or is it in a year's time? But that's going to be the next major DLC. And this is where we are right now in the game. So a lot of things which you are seeing right now, I'm just going to keep replaying this one. A lot of things which you are seeing right now in terms of gameplay is going to be revolving around this for the story thread. Now, what I said is very basic. One of the best descriptions of the story is done by My Name is Bife. He has a 2.5 hour story that leads you from the start all the way to the start of Destiny 2. Then he has a 1.5 hour story on just the darkness alone, which you'll find on his channel. There's also other story threads which will lead you through each of the DLCs that came out, even the DLCs that I've missed. And it's going to take you through everything. I missed the Black Armory, the Drifter, the 9. I missed a lot of those key points in the whole story. But as we go through the game, hopefully I will be explaining most of them, because you will get a video with me doing pure gameplay myself and gameplay with somebody else as we go through the story. I'll just give a feed through on what's going on while I blanket out the volume. Not the volume, the audio from the game. So I hope that you do enjoy my content, and thank you all for watching.